All right, this is Blake with the first ever DZone Cloud Show. Today we are going to recap KubeCon 2021, which was hybrid and in person in Los Angeles, California. They had record new attendance. Can't wait to get into it with our speakers today. Got a few quick pictures from the trip before I bring the guests up to stage. So we had some Korean barbecue with Samir. GitLabs turned 10 years old, so that was really cool. We recreated like some scenes from La La Land at the Grand Central Market. Everyone had some cool booths, so here's the team over at Rookout. We all wore face masks and were like safe, but we did at times had to take like group pictures here with Samir and Hugo from Red Hat. We were at the Los Angeles Convention Center. We also did some cool like Instagram worthy stuff, Samir, so definitely cool with that. And even like Red Hat had some tennis shoes that they did. Just looking at some of the actual KubeCon numbers, we look at this. So with the hybrid, everything else, look at that, over 23,000 people from around the world got to see it. Some of the other data there, some really cool, impressive stuff. And some of the in-person data, over 3,500 people in person. They kept us safe. It was really amazing. And lastly, with some of the virtual data, huge numbers there on that front, so no surprise. So with that little bit out of the way, let me get all our guests up to the main stage. We've got an all-star team of people here today, and I am bringing them all up onto the stage. All right, so let's kick it off, and we will start off with Mr. POPCast himself, and then feel free, everyone, to go around and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Blake, thanks for having me on this wrap up. This recap is awesome. My name is Dan Papandrea. I'm the director of open source community ecosystem for a company called Sysdig. I'm also the host of a show called the POPCast, the #1 podcast in cloud native. And I'm the executive producer of Cloud Native TV, which is CNCF Twitch with Kaslin, who's there, and a host of other really cool people. So thanks for having me on.
Who's next?
All right, Kaslin, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kaslin Fields, and I'm a developer advocate at Google Cloud, where I focus on Google Kubernetes Engine, GKE, their managed Kubernetes project, as well as the open source Kubernetes project, where I'm a contributor. I'm also a CNCF ambassador, and like Pop said, I'm involved with the cloudnative.tv effort, which is the CNCF's Twitch stream.
Very cool, and security was a huge focus, so no KubeCon recap show could be complete without Mr. Brian and the OpenSSF.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian Behlendorf. I'm with the Linux Foundation. I've been with the Linux Foundation for 5 years, and at KubeCon, we announced the launch of this new initiative, kind of a sister initiative to the CNCF, called the Open Source Security Foundation, which I'll be heading up. I'm heading up, and yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Great, thanks for that, Brian. And let's bring up next Dan ×2.
Hey everybody, I am Other Dan, or Dan Lorenc. Yeah, I am involved in a whole bunch of open source stuff, including the OpenSSF, which Brian Behlendorf just mentioned. I am on the technical advisory committee there. And I am also co-founder and CEO of a new company working on supply chain security called Chainguard.
All right, very cool. Welcome, Dan and Dan and Dan. And then Samir, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Blake. Myself, Samir Behara. I'm a platform architect at EBSCO. I'm also a Microsoft data platform MVP. I run the tech user group in Birmingham, Alabama. Proud to be part of the DZone core group. Looking forward to this discussion. It's going to be fun. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, our very own SEO expert, content expert, Hayata.
Yeah, my name is Hayata. I work at DZone as a SEO analyst. So, Blake and I work every day, and we maintain our great community, content and everything for Google. And somebody's from Google today, so I'm so excited to join this session.
Yeah, and Hayata was with us out at KubeCon as well, so really great. It was both our first time ever going. So let's kick it off with the first topic. And what were some of your like big highlights from KubeCon this year? What was the exciting things or exciting moments for you? Anyone can jump in. Feel free. Let's dive into this first topic.
Before we get started, though, can I ask Hayata, can I get some tips on how to do better SEO? Because apparently you're an expert, so that's good.
Sounds great.
Do you mind if I go first on this one, just real quick? In terms of like, I think the co-located events were really cool, right? So if you think about things like, EBPF Day was one I was involved in. That was really cool in terms of, we heard things like WASM, and then EBPF is just taking a lot of storm. So we use this as cloud native EBPF data to really get some visibility on EBPF. So the co-located days were a lot of fun. And then also, like, obviously Cloud Native Security Day was another one I was involved in. But what the amount of response, and even Dan, I think other Dan did a keynote there along with his conference. I think we got the numbers. I think we're the top 4 maybe of the co-located events. It was just a lot of fun, seeing all that collaboration as well, because I said this in the opening. I was the MC for that, and I was like, look, it doesn't take one technology, it doesn't take one project, it takes a community to ensure security, right? And so it was great to hear all of these, amazing companies, projects, people share this knowledge, and the end users are all the greater for it. So from that perspective, it was a highlight. One other thing I want to mention is this talk. This talk by Julia Simon was fantastic. It was about burnout. It wasn't specific to a technical. It was very specific to the human experience. And, Kaz and I are on like the contributor experience, and it doesn't, we want people to get involved that maybe are non-contributors as well. But this, from this perspective, Julia just knocked it out of the park, because she was open about her experience with burnout, because we've all experienced that. Especially during the pandemic, it's a much more of a heavier topic, right, for us, but having like coping mechanism for this was fantastic. And last but certainly not least is my friend. I got to finally meet my friend here. Hold on one sec. Kaslin. It's the first time I've literally talked to her for 2 years, so it was really cool to meet her in the flesh. So that's pretty much it.
I don't know who wants to go next, but I guess I'll hop in. Some of my favorite highlights from the conference, one obviously, of course, is I got to keynote. On the first day, I was in the first day keynotes, and I got to give a little 5-minute kind of lightning talk about what the open source project is doing to enable multi-cluster Kubernetes architectures, because kind of traditionally, Kubernetes has had the Kubernetes universe. Within the cluster is just its own universe, and it doesn't know or care about anything outside of the single cluster. So when you have multiple clusters, it can be pretty challenging, especially if you want to connect those in certain ways, like you want to deploy applications across them, things like that. So I talked about efforts from SIG multi-cluster and SIG networking that are working to kind of bridge that gap and bring clusters closer together. In terms of sessions, one of my favorites was there was a session where a networking engineer talked about his journey of coming into this Kubernetes space and learning the skills to work with Kubernetes, and gave this awesome perspective of looking at Kubernetes from a network engineer's perspective and how he started to learn it and all of the tools that he really liked. So that was one of my favorites. And of course, meeting Dan Pop.
Big shout out. I think Carlos Santana's here. By the way, he was one of the kind of the leaders, along with Dims, of the hallway track on Slack, which was really cool to get to hear people like, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bogart your show. I promise you. It's just like, but it's so cool to see Carlos here. And so go ahead. Sorry, whoever's next.
I'll jump in next. And Kaslin, you illustrated all of your slides, right? That was pretty cool as well to see. I know this is more impressionistic, but one of my the highlights for me was just seeing everybody back together face to face. In some cases for a long time. I mean, I've been back to two other conferences since everything kind of shut down, and by far this was the largest. This felt the safest, and it was just great to see everyone following the protocols, but then also still being engaged in conversation, and the hallway track was just as fun as always. And yeah, no, impressionistically, like I think we're back on the path to being able to do these things face to face. Really glad though that we can find a way to do it hybrid, because I think you just end up involving so many more people when you can do it hybrid, with unique advantages to each. So yeah, just really happy about that.
I can go next. Again, this was kind of my first KubeCon, attending that in person, so it was awesome. And again, like after like 1.5 years attending a conference was a great feeling. Attending the day one keynote was awesome. A lot of good information which was shared. I did attend a couple of pre-events like the Service Mesh Con, the PromCon, which had a lot of good content. I think the sponsor showcase, like talking to so many vendors, sponsors, like and the tooling they provide, that was awesome as well. But yeah, a lot of networking after a long time. Just getting out of the virtual conference and getting an opportunity to participate in a live in-person event. A lot of learnings. So yeah, that sums it up for me.
I'll go next. Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on kind of what Brian and what Pop said of my highlights. It was awesome just seeing everybody back together. I was kind of curious what the conference was going to look and feel like with all of the new restrictions, but it felt remarkably safe and spaced out, and all of the good things, I guess, of being back in person and seeing everyone again. I also liked some of the talks that included more of a human element, like you were talking about as well. My favorite was actually the SolarWinds talk at Supply Chain Security Con, which was the first Day Zero event. It was just incredible because it covered everything, from a technical perspective, this awesome system they had built, but also kind of really captured what it felt like to be in the room at a company going through an incredibly public security issue with congressional testimonies and that kind of thing at the same time. So it kind of captured both, and that one was really my favorite.
I think also can give you props on that, because you organized that whole thing and all of that, and that was pretty awesome to do. But also even better, we got to get a picture with Wig Store Jesus here, right? So that was pretty cool.
All right, so Cubecon for me was very exciting and inspiring. So people were there, at Cubecon to learn something new, and they want to inspire themselves about what they do, right? And then DZone is the same. We are here to educate our audience. Many cloud engineers and DevOps engineers, and I was very inspired, by meeting exciting people, people who want to learn. I'm not a developer or engineer, but that was a great opportunity for me to understand what we need to do for our audience as a SEO.
Yeah, it's great. And I think, on my side, it was just like every morning walking over to that convention center, I was meeting someone new, right? A complete stranger. And then we would just literally walk and talk like that whole way over there. And it was just really amazing with the event. There weren't those real barriers, right? You had the wristbands, the green, yellow, and red and stuff like that. But just everyone was so open and willing to meet and interact and engage with each other. And just that sort of mesh of ideas, people, and getting to meet people from all over and what their experiences were was just so amazing. And like what Dan is saying is like some of these people like Samir that we've talked virtually for years, and actually getting to like hang out in person, explore downtown for great chicken sandwiches, and really getting to spend quality time. And because it was a little bit smaller, I thought that was great, right? So there wasn't as many Twitter conversations that you usually get at trade shows, like, hey, well, you pass someone, hey, we'll talk at another time, and you never see them again. So just having so many great moments, really getting to connect with everyone, and just really everybody there, all the attendees and everyone I spoke to were so warm and willing to take time out and connect with others, right? So that was just really amazing. And I'm just like blown away, like thinking like, where the heck is this going to actually end up in 5 years? Because this is just like the tip of everything. So really amazing show and really great first experience. And then I just wanted to hit, as kind of like shifting away from that topic, that security was a huge area of focus this year from my vantage point. There was a lot of things that clearly spiked out, but security was something, as far as water cooler, that everyone was talking about in different forms. If we were out eating or going out somewhere and seeing other attendees, we could hear like people talking about security. So I'm just, from the panel here, what were some of those biggest developments around security? I know, Brian, you had some big ones there. So just from your perspective, what were some of those big things, and kind of your thoughts on it at KubeCon this year?
Well, it was really great to see how much focus there was throughout both the main conference agenda, as well as the two side events earlier, the Secure Supply Chain Con and the Cloud Security one-day event as well. I mean that, but just permeated throughout. I mean, so much of what is in the OpenSSF has come out of the cloud native community. And as I said on stage, like the cloud native community either consumes every piece of open source software that's out there, or it's a part of the cloud native ecosystem already, right? And there are so many open source communities who are just completely blasé about security, who think it's somebody else's problem. It's the security teams, it's the ops team's problem. It's not my problem as a developer, right? Caveat developer, or user, but really this community does care about it, and that came through in all the content and the conversations and all the support we received at the launch. So that was great to see.
The end users, I think, were also the focus in terms of like you heard stories from SolarWinds, from Apple at eBPF Day, from and even like those are things. Hearing those things permeate down was really cool from a security perspective. Being with Sysdig, right? Like we Falco is like a runtime tool that we made an announcement in terms of tying things from syscalls to not only Kubernetes audit logs, but we added cloud activity as well from a standard place. And so from my perspective, again, having these tools, having folks kind of see what they do with real use cases where people are using, really invigorates folks. Because I mean, you think about software supply chain, the executive order, and this is Lawrence's world, it's not my world, but like like this, there needed to be a software supply chain day because of that executive order, because of SBOM, because of all those things, right? And so people are just like, well, how do I do that? And so seeing real and user cases was probably, like, I think the number one thing that I saw from a security perspective, along with the fact that like this is a real thing. And by the way, I want to correct when I was on your show before, I said 2.5 trillion. It's actually my dyslexia. It's $5.2 trillion in misconfigurations that Accenture said in terms of a security perspective. This is a real problem. And that's why I think it was the focus this year on KubeCon. That's your cue, Dan. Go knock it out of the park, buddy.
Yeah, it was just awesome to see security like literally everywhere. I would just walk into a random talk halfway through, and there were just slides about security and stuff from runtime style container escapes all the way to walkthroughs of different open source compromises and stuff that Brian was talking about in the keynotes. It was probably like over half of the talks that I just randomly walked into in a sampling were about some form of security. I think it really reflects that the kind of day 2 or day 3 kind of buzzword thing, where in past KubeCons, a lot of people were still planning migrations or starting to, and now people are at the stage where they're actually running things full-fledged in Kubernetes in cloud native environments, and they're trying to figure out how to do that securely and correctly.
Yeah, like I think one of the things which I heard a lot during the conference was supply chain security. Like, seems like it's becoming very critical for enterprises who are operating in the cloud native space, and especially with like organizations embracing a remote work model due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I believe like the need to secure data and like systems has become more critical in the last couple of years than ever before. So there was a lot of talks, discussions about zero trust security model. Kept on hearing things about least privilege, identity access management, container security was huge. I guess there were a lot of sponsors I talked about who were kind of providing a lot of features around that. Shifting left on the security strategy was one key thing as well, which was, I guess, my takeaway from the conference. A lot of companies are kind of trying to integrate security into their CI/CD pipelines, and just like making part of their development, and not like leaving security till the end before like you hit production. It's just part of your pipeline. The shared responsibility model as well. I think I heard a lot about that as enterprises are kind of moving to the cloud. So yeah, like security was a big buzzword. A lot of good talks as to showing how companies are like real time that they are implementing security mechanisms for their company. So it was very insightful. Yeah.
All right. And then if we have no other thoughts on security, we've got a question from Carlos. I will put that up on the screen here. Everybody can see it. Carlos asked the panel, what can we do to make Kubernetes easier for new folks? Continue doing and new ideas.
I have some thoughts in this area. So as Pop mentioned, I'm part of the Kubernetes SIG security, or not SIG security, what am I talking about? SIG Contribex, which is the special interest group.
We'd love you in SIG security and in SIG if you want to join us.
I'm not yet, maybe someday. If I keep doing Twitch shows with Tabitha and Brad, I'll end up there. But I'm part of the special interest group for contributor experience, and this is one of the things that we really care about from a contributor perspective. I think there's a couple of perspectives here of how do we make Kubernetes easier for new folks who want to understand and contribute to it, and for those who need to use it. We need to be working on both of those sides. So from the contributor perspective, a lot of folks in contributor experience, this is like top of their lists, is how do we make Kubernetes easier for people to understand and start contributing to? So we have a few efforts going on there. There's great documentation about how to get started contributing. We'd like to work on, or we are working on, some videos to help people understand. Well, I guess we switched it to text, but we're working on some new contributor workshop type stuff. Normally at KubeCons, we would host a new contributor workshop where we work folks through what it's like to start contributing to Kubernetes. So we're trying to make that content more accessible. And from the end user side, it can be so difficult to know where to start with Kubernetes. We need to have really good entry points where we explain what Kubernetes is and why it matters to you, and then give you some points to start exploring from there. So we need to be really careful with our wording and the ways that we bring people in, and make sure that we give them a path to move forward and keep learning in Kubernetes.
Totally agree with Kaz. I think, one thing I'll add to that is like, we come from the dark ages of like having to like take up doing Kubernetes the hard way. Shout out to you, Kelsey. And if you think about it, there's tools that made things easier. Things like, Minikube. My guy over there created that, right? So it's like, and then things like Kind that made it easier for that. So, what it's saying is time and adoption will help things get easier from that perspective. And I think there'll be a point where we obfuscate even like the operational burden that is Kubernetes, right? It'll be kind of, hey, we have things like Pulumi out there. We have like Terraform. We have all of these tools that help like deploy the backend stuff. So it's going to be a developer can literally just, spin things up as necessary. But I totally agree with Kaz on this one. It's like, look, it's the endpoints here that people are pointing things to that I think will make things easier from that perspective. So.
Yeah, I'll echo the same as well. It's a from a technology perspective, again, it's a steep learning curve, but I guess like for new folks, you need to start from the basics, maybe from containers and just moving step by step. There are a lot of free resources available at this point. There are a lot of learning paths as well available if you want to onboard into Kubernetes. I think there was an announcement about a new certification coming up for during KubeCon. The KCNA seems like that's a beginner level certification for.
Shout out to Katie Gamanjian from
CNCF. Absolutely. For getting that certification, like for new folks, there is a learning path which you can take and just ramp up your knowledge on the CNCF technologies and Kubernetes especially. So if you have not taken a look on KCNA, just Google it maybe, and then there's a lot of good information, a lot of like learning paths associated with that training as well.
Should give a shout out to Civo Cloud too, by the way, another great company. Like 90 seconds, you can have a cluster up. That and back in the day, if you think about back in the day, like again, having to spin up things the hard way, tough. GKE can spin up an instance, like all of these managed services, AKS, EKS, all these things that are out there. The barrier to entry to getting into Kubernetes is less and less than it's ever been, and I think it's going to get even easier for new users as the adoption grows.
All right, yeah, great question, Carlos. Thanks for the panel. That's and actually, me and Hayata, we're going to take that new certificate.
Yeah, right. So I have a great advice. So I'm not a developer or cloud engineer, DevOps, whatever. So when I joined DZone, I had no idea about Kubernetes and cloud engineering, anything. So what I did was, of course, Google. Yeah, so if you go to cloud.google.com, there's amazing content pieces and documentation. Of course, AWS has a great content, and DZone is trying to be there too. So what you need to do is just be curious about it, and then be passionate about what you're doing, and just Google it. Yeah, that's my basic advice.
If I could ask a question as well on that, I'm really curious from your perspective. Like, how did you decide where to start with learning Kubernetes, and what did it mean to you? What were you looking for when you were looking for Kubernetes? Because I think you have a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, right. So, what I was looking for was, of course, one-on-one content pieces, right? Because I have no idea about Kubernetes. And then the interesting find, which is not related to, like any technical aspects, was Kubernetes is actually in Greek. Yeah, that means pilot. Stuff like that makes me like interested, and like it was kind of like fun, progress, for myself. Yeah. And then, I talked to my developer friend and, hey, do you know what Kubernetes means? Yeah. And stuff like that. You can have like basic conversations with experienced people. Yeah. That's my, steps. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love the fun fact approach. Fun facts are a great way to start learning something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Excellent. And then moving on to the next topic, what were the biggest surprises at KubeCon this year? So there's a lot of stuff you kind of maybe said like, of course this is going to happen, but was there anything that surprised you in a good way, of course, right? So it's what were one of those, like, was there one or two things, if you want to, the panel here, talk about some of the biggest surprises at KubeCon for you this year?
Shout out to the Chainguard folks. I mean, like, that's probably like, Dan won't say anything. I'll say it. I don't care. It's like, that's some of the best engineers in the world getting together and starting a company for the topic that's really big in our hearts, right? Software supply chain.
I don't think I can call that a surprise, because I wasn't surprised,
but everybody else was. So, I mean, that was good. But also, I mean, I'll throw this out there. It's like, there was, I'm going to go back to the co-chairs. It was not a surprise per se. It was just welcoming to see the co-chairs on the stage for the first time live, after 4, events not being in person, right? So you got Stephen Augustus, Constance Carmanoulis, right? And Jasmine. And the fact that, like, it's not so much a surprise, but it was just so good to see that live, is because all of their hard work doing all of this for everybody, and being able to see that was, I think, not so much a surprise, but just more of a good warm feeling, I guess.
And if I can hop in after that, as Pop was talking, I was like, oh, you know what? I know what was most surprising about being at KubeCon physically was remembering how tiring conferences are. So exhausting. You have to walk all around the convention center all day and figure out what you're going to go to and have lots of awesome conversations with folks. And it basically runs all day. Like, from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to sleep, you are doing KubeCon things. You are at KubeCon. So it's very tiring in that way. But also, I was surprised at how natural it felt to be back, because I used to do a lot of conferences, of course, as a developer advocate. And it felt kind of right to be back. And I thought it would feel much more strange with all of the masks and all the precautions, but it just kind of felt like being at a conference again, which I thought was a really great surprise.
I'll jump in on that one too. Yeah, I had forgotten how tiring and exhausting conferences are, especially like this one had an extra day tacked onto the front. So yeah, by like Thursday, I had run out of conference stamina.
Yeah, somewhat on a related note, I mean, probably not a surprise given that it's KubeCon. Getting some echo. Is that Samir? Are you on mute or? Okay. Probably not a surprise given it was KubeCon and a well-run event, but coming from the blockchain space, it was a nice surprise not to see like Lamborghinis kind of being paraded out front, despite it being kind of LA, Hollywood. It was nice not to be shilled to buy somebody's token that they had just minted or their NFT of their really bad art over here or there. It was nice to see people saying we're going to use this to solve some real problems we all operationally have, and not like we're going to save the world from ecological destruction, or like kind of sometimes in the blockchain space people's ambitions get far ahead of what their actual solutions are, which is adorable, and it's like important to try to like be thinking about the bigger world we live in. But sometimes when we were there as Hyperledger, which is the last project I was leading, we often felt like Jesuit priests walking up and down Las Vegas Boulevard trying to talk about the benefits of proper like financial management when everyone else around you is in a casino, right? And here it just felt a little bit more natural. Like we're all here trying to solve real problems we have on the ground, and use better technology to do that. And the security is one angle on that, and not the only one. It just felt more human. So I really appreciated that. That wasn't a surprise at all, actually. I was really hoping to find a more human community.
You found it.
I'll just make a note that during the day one keynote, I think Priyanka mentioned that the growth of CNCF, like I think she mentioned that CNCF has grown by like 40% from the beginning of 2020. So just showing you how that space is kind of growing, and kind of like there are companies who are kind of they need to respond to these challenges, right? And they are adopting these technologies. One more trend which I saw was like the growing popularity of GitOps. There were a lot of sessions around GitOps and how a lot of enterprises are leveraging the GitOps workflow to kind of manage their continuous deployment of the production application. That was a great learning. I think Dan mentioned about the adoption of eBPF. I went into few sessions and kind of that's kind of a very brand new technology. I felt like extending the capabilities of the operating system. That's one area where I would like to focus on, read more about eBPF, and the emergence of service mesh at scale. That was like I went to a number of sessions, I would say, apart from attending the Service Mesh Con. The sessions on service mesh, implementing like mesh architecture, running hundreds of microservices at scale, dealing with those complexities. That was really good to learn how enterprises are kind of dealing with those. So yeah, those were kind of the highlights, I would say, for me during this conference. Yeah.
Can I pull a Kaslin real quick, Samir? Let me ask you a question on the eBPF side, like, because again, I was kind of one of the organizers for that, right? And did you actually come out with a couple of things that were like, hey, I really want to explore some of these technologies? That's a question for you, Samir.
Yeah, like again, I think I made some notes. There were a lot of cloud native use cases which eBPF kind of helps in solving, like security, networking, observability, and you are able to do all those without making any application or configuration changes. So that was awesome. Again, as I said, like need to learn more on that space. I think there were few vendors who I talked to who were kind of big on that space, providing some products. So I would like to look at that. Hopefully in the next 1 month or so.
One of the talks I'll definitely recommend from there, like a bunch of all of them. if you want to go on mute.
If you want to go on mute.
Is basically like Derek Parker did a debugging eBPF applications there. And I thought that was really cool because there's not like a lot of that out there. And obviously Liz did a really good one on, just kind of best practices and getting started. But it was really cool, like I said, from that perspective, is Derek doing a lot of that kind of specific to debugging stuff, because what eBPF really is a pinhole into the kernel to get all of that data points there. To me, that's a new world, just like WASM Day was also a great event, right? So like there's so many great technologies out there that not from like people just need to touch and feel and see how they can use them in their environments, right?
Yep. For me, it's DZone specific, but it was amazing for me to see our core members here. We have a great community here, and Samir is here, and we met Daniel O at Red Hat. Yeah, that was a great opportunity for me to see people I know, face to face. Yeah, and then the other thing is this industry is booming. You have to be here, and learn something new every day. So since I came back from LA, I've been telling my sons to study math, to be an engineer in the future.
Shout out to OpenShift Commons, by the way. Stu Miniman ran that really well. Another amazing co-located event. Daniel Lowe gets a shout out as well. Obviously, the whole Red Hat team just is fire. Like Luke's there from Sig Store as well. I mean, there's just a ton of amazing talent, and being able to, like you said, interact and talk about things in person again. That's the true hallway track, right? That's the joy that we have by talking to each other about these things. Oh, you're doing this cool thing. I'm doing this cool thing. Maybe we can do this cool thing together. That kind of thing. That's, I think, how Kubernetes got started, right? It's like we're all doing these things. Let's do them together, right? That's the joy that is our community. That is it right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And then for me, the biggest things, no pun intended, were for trade shows, it's will your shoes hold up? So I actually had On Cloud shoes. Shout out to On Cloud. OC, I only needed to wear that one pair of shoes the whole time, never had issues. Just absolutely amazing. So that was the big kind of surprise for me, putting them to the test in this LA Convention Center. Number two, I was talking to the Cubecon and Cloud Native team is who's a really big podcast in the Kubernetes space, someone really big, excited. And we looked at some of the stuff out there, didn't find anything interesting, and they're of course, the POPCast. And so just getting Dan on the radar, seeing what he's doing on his podcast. I mean, this is we're talking about podcasts in this year, but Dan is so far ahead of the curve in terms of what he's cleaning, what he's doing, and it's got these real stories. This is everything a podcast should be, and it's just one of the best things that are out there. So it's just amazing to just find out about it, to watch it, and then get to meet him in person, and then to have Dan blow your mind with the things that he's doing, the things that he's planning. So that was really great. And then third, and I think we can all agree, is just the KubeCon chair team, Jasmine at Twitter and everybody else and CNCF. They pulled off an in-person event plus hybrid, in Los Angeles during the pandemic. This is not easy. So I just wanted to say for all of us on the panel and everyone that got to attend, whether you're in person or virtual, just a huge shout out. This is there's no precedence, right? They just did such an amazing job, and everyone putting on events. Give yourself a round of applause, because you just did such an amazing work. So I don't know if anyone else wants to give a shout out to the KubeCon or Cloud Native team, but it's just amazing what they were able to pull off this year.
Events team by far. I'm going to throw that out there. Lindsay, she's the saving grace. That whole team is fantastic. Obviously Priyanka, Chris Anishek. I mean, I can't pronounce his name right, but maybe that's it. I'm just going to take a stab at it. But all of us, I think are all the better for that. In terms of the, the KubeCon, program committee, the co-located events program committee, we would have been lost without them. And like you said, going back to the co-chairs, that right there. And also the incoming folks. I mean, you have Emily Fox coming in, Roka's coming in as well. I think Jasmine. I mean, you have this nucleus of just really amazing people. But yeah, big shout out to that team. This is not easy, folks. Virtual events, there's not software supply chain, but there's supply chain issues. You can't get things in stores, and they were able to get all these things together. So big shout out to the CNCF group. Just awesome people.
Yeah, the events team, I want to just piggyback on there. We called it a hybrid conference, but that really means they ran 2 separate conferences at the same exact time. It's double the work for them at least, and it's amazing they pulled it all off.
Also, shout out to Cody Lisk, who helped with a lot of like speaker coordination and a lot of all sorts of things going on at KubeCon. I ran into him several times and had to ask for his help. So shout out there.
All right, very cool. And as we open it up for questions from the audience, so if you're watching us live, you're out there somewhere on social, feel free to put your questions. We'll take anything that you have that you throw out there. And I'll start it off in asking the panel on our Q&A side. Will you be in Valencia on May 18th in that week in Spain?
Planning to be.
I hope so too. But if this last year taught us anything, it's anything could happen. So.
Yeah, I hope so as well.
All right, very
looking
cool.
forward to it. Yeah,
The POPCast tour. I'm sorry, go ahead, Samir.
No, I was just saying, yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully, can make it there, but we'll see.
The POPCast tour will be next year in 2022, and we will be going all over the globe and doing interviews all over. So that is definitely a stop on there. So stay tuned. Hola España.
So the POPCast tour, what other like exciting things can you tell people about it that you're willing to share today?
Nope. See you all in 2022.
Awesome. But yeah, even still, like, you should have followed the podcast, and just amazing. We got links to Dan's Twitter and there. You can find it on the DZone article as well. So stay tuned for all that great stuff. There was a question, a little bit random in chat. Gabe is asking about futuristic AI and virtual reality. I'm not really sure, but I guess maybe it's somewhat related to something. I have no idea if anyone wants to take that one.
I think maybe just kind of what was your favorite tech that you saw at KubeCon or you learned about?
We'll go with that.
Do it.
I was real happy to see Project Sigstore there, both having a booth to talk about it and handing out the little MFA keys. We were joking we should distribute them in like the parking lots or like streets outside. The whole point of this is there should be like a secure chain, a secure handoff from somebody you trust to get one of these things. Right there, you go. And we'll be figuring out through OpenSSF how to support the distribution of these to anybody who wants them for free. So stay tuned on that. You might even already be able to get some of them from somewhere, I forget. But we got to get the stuff out there so that people can start signing their releases with durable identities.
I'll hop in as well. One of the sessions that I attended was on Vitesse, which is a CNCF project that I didn't know anything about previously. And so it's a distributed data store type solution, like a distributed database. And I have a background in storage, so I'm always very curious about how people are approaching the problem of persistent data in Kubernetes and just in distributed systems in general. If your application can be anywhere, then where is your data? And what does that mean for how you access your data and latency, performance, all sorts of questions that you have around data storage with distributed systems. So getting to see the Vitesse crew and what they've built was really interesting. I thought it was a really cool solution. So I'm curious to see where that goes from here.
I think the biggest mind-blowing thing for me was the talk about abusing OCI registries by John Johnson Jr. at Google and Daniel Mangum. They did some crazy hacks and built a whole bunch of really cool registries for demos and stuff, but they actually built a full interactive chat client using an OCI registry as a specification, and messages were getting saved as like Docker layers and all this cool stuff. And they used that live to do their Q&A during the talk. So people were typing into their little OCI registry chat app. And that was just awesome to see people hack common specifications that way.
Awesome, very cool. And the other big one was like Argo, kind of got the Argo t-shirt on today. Samir was like, Argo, Argo, Argo. what are you talking about, Samir? Argo, Argo, Argo. So that did seem to do really well and great at the conference this year for stuff people are doing. Their booth was happening for sure. And then we've got a question from the audience. BXT Geek ask how to start with the SRE, currently working as a support engineer for enterprise storage.
You want this one, Kaz, or can I get it?
You can go first. Yeah.
So we have a channel in the CNCF Slack at BXC Geek. I would love for you to join that. It's random, right? It's the random chat. Well, it's the CNCF Slack. It's really cool. But in the random channel, we have two things pinned, and one is Dims from VMware. He's on various talks. He's a phenomenal person. He has a list of how to contribute to various projects that are there. We also have the Kubernetes Contributor, which obviously that'll hand it over to my friend Kaslin to talk more about. But basically, the contributor part is how to contribute to these things, how to understand which are the underlying technologies and languages you need to learn to be able to contribute to said projects and all of those things. But like I said, this is a very inclusive community. We want to make sure people feel welcome and can get started. And again, it doesn't mean that, hey, I'm a support engineer for enterprise storage. That doesn't mean anything. You can join us. You can do whatever you need to do to be part of this beautiful and amazing community. Over to you, Kaz.
And for anyone who might not be familiar with the term, SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineer, which is a role or a discipline that this was kind of invented by Google, and we wrote this book about how we have these engineers who basically keep sites up and running. Google has to stay up and running all the time. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into the reliability, that's a good word for it, of modern applications. And so site reliability is kind of a discipline where people focus on that aspect of running a modern business. And it involves aspects of DevOps, which I like to describe as a discipline that combines the skill sets of developers and operations. So it involves understanding the infrastructure, which you have a great head start on probably with enterprise storage as your background, especially as a support engineer. You'll have a great understanding of both the concept of reliability and a lot of the infrastructure pieces probably. And then development, some of the coding skills. I feel like infrastructure as code is a really good example of a DevOps thing because you're writing code to define your infrastructure. So DevOps skill sets, just learning about Kubernetes will give you some great insight into some of the tooling that SREs need to understand. Just get involved with the community and we'll be happy to help you as you go along this journey. You've got a great start.
I do, a lot of keyword analysis, and there are many people who want to, change their careers from QA engineers to SRE or DevOps, and many people are also confused between DevOps and the SRE. Yeah, so learning something from the beginning, what do SRE engineers do and stuff like that. And, you can always Google again, Google. So that is my advice for anybody who is interested in SRE. Yeah.
The other thing is
go ahead.
one point. I'm sorry. It doesn't even have to be specific to Kubernetes as a project. There's so many amazing CNCF projects, right, that are out there. That's why I'm saying, Dim's list shows a lot of things from a contribution perspective. There's things like Falco, which I'm a part of, I'm the community manager for. So if you know C++ and you're working as an SRE, or if those type of things you want to learn about those technology, or want to hear about Linkerd, another project that graduated this year, right? Argo, beautiful technology, right? And Flux and all of those types of things. So, don't set your sights on just a specific thing. Kubernetes is very dear and near to my heart, but there's also many other great projects in the CNCF. So don't limit yourself to just that one.
Maybe one of those projects that hops on the persistent data challenge of distributed systems might be a good spot for you.
Boom, right there.
I'll just add that I went and grabbed this book, which was behind me. So again, this is if you want to start with SRE, the site reliability workbook is the best one, I would say. It talks a lot about how do you build SRE practices in your organization from the ground up. Also, like touches on the human aspect of the SRE, like how are you working with your development teams? How are you kind of creating tools which they would like to use? So there's a lot of good insight in this book. Again, that's kind of one advice which I will provide. And just read through that. Yeah.
All right, excellent. And I just realized, Samir, that one of your biggest highlights and moments we failed to talk about. Was there like somebody from the Azure team you got to interview and talk crickets with?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was Lockie Evention. He is the principal program manager from the Azure core team at Microsoft. I have been following him forever, like since 2018, where he was presenting a lot about Service Mesh, Kubernetes, Helm. And I brought a great opportunity to kind of have an interview with him and talk about cloud native trends. So yeah, that was for sure one of the highlights for me from KubeCon this year. And thanks, Blake, for kind of helping organize that.
And you were rooting for the same team.
Absolutely. We were like, there was a cricket match going on, an IPL cricket match. And right after the interview, he takes out his phone and he just says, let me take a look at the cricket score. And I was taken by surprise. Like I was saying, do you follow cricket? And he said, yeah, I have been following the cricket and watching it live during this conference. I said, wow, that's awesome.
He celebrated a birthday, by the way, this week. Lockie did. Wonderful, wonderful dude. POPCast alumni, by the way. FYI.
Nice. We'll sing happy birthday on 3. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
Incredible. Can we give a shout out to one other thing that I don't think we've talked about at all? You know, the unofficial restaurant of KubeCon? It was El Cholo. I don't know if you've ever been to the Mexican place that was around the block from KubeCon. El Cholo, big shout out. If you're ever in the LA Live area and you want amazing enchiladas, hit up El Cholo, everyone.
We will be sure to get more information so that we can share it. Our big one was the Korean barbecue and then the coffee chicken place Birdies. And then when Samir said he was going to write a review on Yelp, the guy made sure to give Samir his name so that he could win the Employee of the Year. Nice. All right, but so we're just kind of looks like no more questions, but we'll just start to wrap up. But I just want to say on the DZone side, just really excited to be working with and involved with the Kubernetes space, KubeCon, Cloud Native, and really on our side with DZone articles and our DZone Cloud Show. There's so much diversity in this space. And so if you're out there watching this, whether live or in the future, and we want to hear your story, like reach out to us, whatever your role is and all the different parts of the world. We want to hear all the different stories going on today. And then if there's any way that we can help you out as well, let us know, because that's what we're really big into. And it's just an amazing space to be into. And so just reach out to us for that. Next week, we'll be doing our big 2022 trend show. We'll be doing it live. So if you want to speak on that, reach out to us. But I will end and pass the torch to all of our panel today. Just sort of anything cool that you're working on and any final thoughts from KubeCon that you want to tell everyone. And it was just on my side, it was a huge honor to have some of the brightest, most exciting, and just the most nicest people you'll meet in the industry period on our show today.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure. And I guess I'll throw out something that I've been working on for a while is Google also had a Colo event, and it involves this kind of 4-hour virtual workshop, which I know is a lot, but it's split up into 4 pieces. And I feel like it's a nice, if I may say so myself, I'm very proud of that, as a good entry point for understanding Kubernetes. It's not just about Google Cloud. It goes over GKE if you want to learn about that, but it also has some general tips for Kubernetes. So there's something to check out. I think we're going to be airing, I re-recorded it in a studio. Wow. And we're going to be airing that, I think, at an event in December. I'll have to get you the info, but if you want to check out the Colo event, that's still up, so you can find it.
Nice. Again, thank you so much, Blake, for having us on the panel. I could not be more like reciprocate back to you how nice you've been during this whole process. Really awesome, dude. Great. You're one of the highlights for me at KubeCon as well. A quick shout out also to somebody is Carlos Panado, who won the Chopwood Carry Water Award. One of the best, like, just contributes to every single project and everybody loves him. He's a release manager for Dan's for 6, or he's a release manager for Kubernetes. He's a release manager for Falco as well. So big shout out to Carlos. Shout out to the Falco community. I believe we have one of the best communities out there, and I believe that Falco is the de facto runtime security tool for period for Kubernetes. And I'm really excited about growing that and all the people that are there. So big shout out to Falco. And in terms of the POPCast, like I said, I make the show for the community. This is for everybody. This is not for my education. And so seeing it grow to 500,000 views, 230,000 audio downloads, the #1 podcast in cloud native, because it's for the people. It's not for me. This is for everybody to be part of. And I really enjoy being able to chronicle and talk about these amazing people behind the code. And lastly, but certainly not least, is the CNCF ambassador, just being able to represent the CNCF and its ideals and all of that. I feel honored to be able to do so. And I feel honored to be a leader of, cloud native TV with like probably some of the best people in the community, and we do it for the community. So that's why I'm pumped about it. 2022, we're going to do even more bigger stuff. I said I was going to do 2 times the things I did for this year. I'm going to do 3 times the things for next year. So we always grow as people. And big shout out to the Chainguard crew. They're doing great and amazing things as well. And DZone, I love you all. OpenSSF as well. Did I get everybody? Google, hi Google. Google, I love you all too. So. Who's next? Don't be shy. Brian, all you. Go.
No, I really appreciate the warm welcome for the OpenSSF effort in the cloud native community. And of course, I really invite everyone to come to openssf.org. You will see a lot of familiar names and faces, and we'll be at as many events as we can be, tying together not only stuff happening in cloud native around security, but other open source projects as well, and just trying to uplift everybody out there and how they write their code and publish and distribute it. So come join us.
And same here, thanks for having me, Blake. And the technologies are growing at such a rapid pace. It's so tough to keep up with that pace, right? And these conferences are a great way to just kind of keep yourself up to date with things going around. What are the upcoming trends coming up in the cloud native space? So again, I'm looking forward to working in the space and learning more as I go.
Yeah, thank you so much for the all the panel speakers here today. It's just amazing for our community. It's not only for the DZone, entire community for cloud native and our developers. Yeah, and if for audience, if you have questions, they have they are active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So you can ask us any questions. Yeah, and if you need educational materials or something, just Google it again. And you may find DZone. So if you want to be a great developers, engineers, there are tons of opportunities to learn today and in the future too. So be active and be passionate. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lorenc. Come on, talk, buddy.
My turn. Yeah, I'll just give another shout out to Brian and the OpenSSF. It's a great group of people, and if you're interested in helping improve kind of the public commons of open source and make it more secure and sustainable, then check out the OpenSSF.
And don't forget to check out cloudnative.tv.
Yeah, it's a great point. We'll be sure to put a link out to all that. We've got the Mexican restaurant. So what a great way to start out the first ever DZone Cloud Show. We've got Google with Hayata. So we've just made his year. This is going to be the highlight of his year. He just adopted a cat, so we didn't have any cat sightings in the background yet. OpenSSF F was just such a huge thing. So just amazing to get Brian onto this show. And the other Dan, I think, is out of Austin, one of my favorite cities on planet Earth. Samir's over there in the Cubecon hoodie, which I should have bought, but didn't. But just huge shout out and thanks to all the work that you're doing, and just really for everyone, all the lives that you're touching, right? Because you are out there doing all this work as well behind the scenes. And we hear that reflected in the people that we meet, where you're taking time out to help other people, not just working at these companies, and everybody's doing so much to make this industry better. So huge shout out to everybody in the space and to the panel today. And that is a wrap, and we will see you here in a few weeks.
Thanks, Blake, for having us.